Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is another edition of Success Talk with Dr. Herbert Harris and incredible people who have had success, who have had challenges, who have overcome those challenges, and who have made incredible breakthroughs to do good things, positive things, and powerful things. And today we have Dr. Rubye Braye, retired colonel, executive coach, and a list of accolades that we could be here all afternoon sharing. So welcome, Dr. Braye, to Success Talk.
Good evening, Dr. Harris. What a joy to be with you.
Well, you know, Doc, whenever I talk to you, it is such an inspiring thing because you have a zest for life. You have a hunger for the truth and to research things and then to share them. That is an amazing quality.
Thank you. Well, I learned many years ago that so much of what we need in order to thrive, not just survive, is hidden in books. And somebody said, if you want to make sure that Black people don't get information, just put it in books, because many of us won't read. But I have a house full of books, and I am convinced that I owe health and a measure of resources, wealth, and access to the world, having traveled almost around the world, to what I've learned in books. And
yes,
I am very thankful.
Well, you know, so often I find that those of us who have a love for books that started early in life, maybe share a little about your background, where you grew up and your family, just how that seed that is you now, how it started out.
I'd love to do that. As a little kid, I'm one of 8 children. And my mother so believed in the value of education that she sacrificed to send us to a Catholic school because she thought we'd get a better education there than in the public school. Now, we lived on a dirt street, and so there are probably some things that many children had that we did not have, but I don't remember missing a thing. There were 2 things that she made sure that we had, and that was a YMCA card and a library card. In the summertime, when we were out of school, we had Bible studies and those summer Bible schools, I think was what they called them, and camps. And when we weren't at camp, we were at the YMCA swimming, and I got to become a lifeguard. She wanted to make sure we never drowned. And we had library cards. And I can remember spending hours in our little tiny community library. When I go there now, the library is the size of my house. So it wasn't some large building full of books. But our community library had yellow National Geographics. And oh my God, I loved sitting, flipping the pages and checking out people around the world who looked different and dressed different and had camels and donkeys and rode horses and farmed in ways that were different from what I remembered my grandparents doing, and had markets. I'd never seen markets like these before. And I just decided as a little kid that one day I would get to see these things up close and personal. And when I got commissioned in the Army, I didn't fly for the first time till I left to go to college as a freshman. And once I was on the plane,
where did you go to college?
It was like, we're going to do this forever. I went to an all-women's college, Hollins in Roanoke, Virginia. It's now a university, and it has its first Black female president. And she seems to be doing a wonderful job. I was invited to participate in an alumni call with 3 other women who are now what do they call it? The golden year, golden anniversary. We've been out of school for 50 years. We
Mm,
started in 1971, finished in 75, but they wanted us to come back and speak to students who are there now and other alum to help explain what had happened across that 50 years. And I
mm,
find it incredible that I have had three great career areas: a military officer, a university professor, a project manager, vice president in a corporation, actually four, and a senior government civilian. And I attribute much of my understanding of these career areas to the time that I've taken to just learn one, the task associated with each discipline, and then two, to have a good appreciation for how to interact with people.
mm.
It is said that if you can get along with people in the world at any level, you cannot help but be successful.
Mm,
That it takes relationships and working with people where your word is your bond, you have a good name, where you can be trusted because you're honest and hardworking, and where your reputation will often precede you because others will know the kind of person you are and recommend you even without you knowing it.
mm.
So it's been a great life. And those, that YMCA card and that library card, I think were the foundation.
Wow.
And I still love
Yeah.
books.
You know, I miss the library now. I often wonder, with this digital approach, books always seem so personal
Mhm.
that you could feel them, you could touch them. And I wonder
Mhm.
if our young people get the same level of impactful learning from a phone or from a post on the computer. Hmm. Something to think about.
It is indeed. I tell you, I don't.
Uh-huh.
And I have two subscriptions to services where I can pull up books on my phone, and I forget that I even have them. I rarely use them, but I love driving where I can pop in a book on tape or a book on CD. There's a service called Scribed that I have on my phone, and there's another one that gives me access to books, but I rarely sit and read books on my phone.
Yeah.
But I will listen to books in
Yes.
my car, and I
Yes.
love driving so I can do it. In
Yes.
fact, that probably keeps me awake on the road because I get so engaged listening to
Yes.
a good
Yes.
book.
Yes. Now, your military career, it seemed that you were on a very academic journey. How did you end up, well, how did you choose the military? How did that happen?
I had been out of college, oh, a year or two, working as a news reporter and a substance abuse counselor for mental health services. And so I was in and out of two city jails and a state penitentiary working with people who had substance abuse issues. And there was a judge, a very senior judge, who trusted me to go and interview people, complete an assessment, and bring back a recommendation regarding how best to support them, whether they needed to be in jail, doing in jail treatment, whether they needed to be released in a residential program, whether they could get out and work. And when I think back, I was 20, 21 years old, so wet behind the ears, I could probably barely spell mental health. And here was this judge who trusted me to make disposition on all of the lives of these people. But I realized that having grown up in a household where my dad died when I was in the third grade, that I had matured really fast. I was like an old lady in a little young woman's body, so that when I could sit down and talk to people, I had a pretty good understanding of whether or not this was somebody who would get out and be a recidivist and be back in a few days, or somebody who really would go to the various meetings for treatment or sit and work with a therapist and do well.
Wow.
And many times they did exactly what we recommended that they do.
Wow. So that sort of gave you that, when you say on-hand people skills.
Yes, by the time I got selected as a young second lieutenant, I showed up in a unit where the old sergeants would say, if you'll just listen to me and basically do what I
Yeah.
recommend that you do, you'll do just fine. And they took good care of me, and I took good care of them. And they took good care of the young soldiers.
Mm. Now, but what's the part from the court system to the second lieutenant? That's a big step. How did you come to
Well,
enlist?
I never enlisted. I applied for a direct commission. At that time, the Army had a direct commission program for women. And I'm in the next to the last class of WACS. You've probably heard of WACS, right?
Yes, yes.
The Women's Army Corps?
Ye-
Yes. Well, there was a time when women did not go through ROTC. They became commissioned officers, many in the medical and admin fields, through the Women's Army Corps. But by the time I was commissioned, they had opened up a number of other career fields for women, the combat service support jobs. So we could work with ammunition, we could work with logistics, we could work with supplies of all sorts. We just weren't in the combat arms areas, infantry, armor, and artillery. But we were so close because the guys who were in infantry, armor, and artillery didn't get any bullets or beams unless our little trucks delivered them. So I got to see a lot of what those units did up close and personal.
See, now that's educational because I understood the wax, but I didn't realize I never heard that before. I kind of wondered,
Yes.
how does a woman become an officer in the army, and especially at that time, and not go through the
Mhm.
foxhole and the trenches and all of that. So now I know. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fort McClellan, home of the Women's Army Corps.
Wow.
Pallas Athene. I learned that Athena was a goddess who ruled with such courage and confidence and competence. When I recently traveled to Greece, I got to see the Temple of Athena, and that was most impressive. The other
Mm.
thing that is so wonderful is just thinking of how women have served so notably. Right now, one of the oldest women or living WAC, she served in a postal unit in France, just received the highest honor the president could give, and she's 105 years old.
I think I saw that.
100.
Yeah, they were saying how they had sorted like millions of pieces of mail for the men who were on the
Yes,
battlefront. Wow.
yes,
Now,
yes.
that was super important because it maintained the connection with the family, with people. It made
Mhm.
it made the fighting make sense.
Yes, it gave people a reason to be there. It's like, why you're there, fighting for the freedom and the protection of our homeland for my parents, my siblings, my spouse, my children. I have a reason to be here, fighting for democracy and freedom.
Now, Doc, as a woman in the military, did you face any particular, or can you think of like a major obstacle, and how did you overcome it?
Hmm, that is a great question. I must confess, I feel so blessed. There were obstacles for sure, and there were people who didn't want us there. There were sergeants who had never worked with women and didn't want women in their units. And I met a couple of officers who didn't necessarily uh, want me in their unit and in the military. And what I learned was that I needed to only show up every day, do my job the best I could, take care of soldiers, and go home. And that I didn't have to worry about trying to figure out how to address them, that I just needed to show up.
Wow. So it's like keep your eye on the job, keep your eye on the prize.
Absolutely.
Did any of them
It's
have
kind of
like
like you, Dr. Harris.
Mhm.
You know how there's such persistence in your spirit. I'm always amazed at how faithful you are. There has not been a Saturday when there was supposed to be the millionaire show when you were not in that chair in front of that camera, arrange for someone to be there if you are on travel. And that kind of faithfulness has just earned my respect for you in that regard. Because
Wow.
it's so easy to find a reason for not showing up. It's like
Mm,
when I heard somebody say the other day, my child graduated from high school and never missed a single day. Can
mm,
you imagine?
wow. Let's
Perfectly. And there
give
aren't
your
many of us who can say that.
give your computer, you know, I find that in doing the interviews, the computers go through a loop and they get to a certain point and just it's almost like they get tired and you have to give them a chance to breathe.
Yes.
Now that
Well, the Apple software update showed up, and I
yes.
think that took a few resources, so that may have created a little distortion.
Now, you know, when you deal in the military, whenever you operate in an environment where people are not excited about your being there, were there ever, you know, there's sometimes you'll meet a person who really was resentful but over time they became a great supporter or a great advocate for you. Did you ever experience
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
I have had advocates all of my career. I had one female supervisor who, mhm, when I first showed up, it was clear to me that there was no real warm greeting. She was not real welcoming or hospitable. But by the time I had been there a year or two, and when I was ready to leave, when I got promoted, first off, she arranged for my promotion party. And when I left, I got one of the highest awards and an excellent efficiency report. And I think that was because I faithfully served and always made her look really good. At that point, I was made responsible. I don't know if you've ever heard of Admiral Grace Murray Hopper. She was the person who basically founded the computer for the military. Admiral Hopper would come to the Department of Defense Computer Institute, which was where I worked at the time, and she would come and speak to classes every month. And she was fabulous. She was brilliant. And when she would come, I would get to be her escort and I would help her with the presentations, and it was always wonderful. And so we got great reviews for those sessions. And as a result, more and more people wanted to come to attend the courses.
Mm.
And over time, I she would ask for me and I would escort her in, go through the training and make sure she got out okay. And by that time, she was an old woman. She was probably close to 80, but she was
Mm.
still on active duty and doing great. So
Wow.
that would be an example of
Yes.
having someone who wasn't totally sold and not an advocate at the start, but
Uh-huh.
later became um, a strong advocate and
Yes.
supporter.
You know, Doc, I really I'm glad you shared that because especially for our young people, it's good to know that things don't happen overnight and that if
Yes.
you can keep your eye on your why, the reason you
Mhm.
want to do this thing, then everything else will fall in line, you know. It may take
Absolutely.
longer or shorter, but as long as those simple things that keep your eye on the prize, that's so profound. And people will begin to respect that about you. Just the fact that they know that you've had challenges, and sometimes I feel like life throws stuff out there just to toughen you up. You know, it's like, do you really want this? Do you
Well,
really want this particular thing? And let me throw this block, let me
yeah,
drop a rock and see if you really go for it. And that just seems to be an excellent example of keeping the faith and working on it. Hmm. Now, in your
yes.
travels, you've been around the world, you've served in many locations. When if you look back on, let's just say, your military service, what would you say your most important, your greatest impact or your greatest victory?
When I was a lieutenant colonel, I got selected to be one of two people to design a software, the requirements for a software application for the Department of Defense, because all of the services were going to use it to move all classes of supply, people and patients as well.
Mm,
And I sat with a fellow who was supposedly one of the sharpest in the Air Force when it came to understanding what products needed to move and how they needed to move. And I was the Army representative. And I realized how much I knew about our supplies, our equipment, our and the people. How much
mm.
I knew about all modes of transportation, intermodal transportation, the documentation that was used to move things. It was wonderful.
Wow.
And it was like I got to be the expert for the Army regarding movement. And it was wonderful. I ended up with a job in the Pentagon and they sent me to get a PhD.
You worked it.
I
And that,
worked in the office of the Assistant Undersecretary for Transportation Policy at the Pentagon.
wow.
And when they decided they wanted to send me back to the Pentagon, I was in the middle of completing a PhD that the Army had agreed to fund, that they were paying for. But I was so concerned that if I went back, the hours in the building would have been such that it would have been very difficult to finish working in the building 12 hours or more a day. So I decided it was time to retire, go finish a PhD and start teaching. And I did that for almost 20 years.
Wow. That, you know,
And that was a great career.
now that's a decision, that those kind of decisions are like life altering, it's like fork in the road decisions. And once you take the road less traveled, you make that decision. Was that a difficult decision though, to leave the Army and to go on and pursue, to move on to that next level?
It was not, because I knew that there were three things that I had sensed that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. One was to teach, another was to serve as a consultant for businesses and organizations, and the third was to go back to radio. I've done the first two, and I suspect that I will find myself in front of a microphone again with a short show that I'll do for women. Now
Yes.
the format is more like a podcast, but I
Yes.
don't think I really want to do a podcast. What I want to do instead
Mhm.
is offer like a 5 minute sound bite for women, chopped full of information from experts about how to do many of the things that trap us or that seem to be barriers that hold us back. How to go around them, get under them, go over them, and keep it moving.
Now that's really the goal of these success talks, those barriers, those things that stop people, and
Mhm.
the ability to, as you say, go around them, go through them, go over them. Wow. Mm.
Absolutely. Keep it
A-
moving.
As you look at those challenges, is there one quality that keeps coming up, that no matter what the challenge is, like this, a certain routine or a certain mindset that you need to be able to go around, go under?
Well, I tell you. There is talk about being purpose driven, and I don't believe it. I believe that instead of being purpose driven, that it is wise to be led of the spirit. That many of us have a little voice inside saying go left or go right or stop or stand up. And I have found that when I have listened to that inner voice speaking about time, place, and weight in the moment, that it has protected me, provided for me, opened opportunities for me, showed me opportunities that on my own I would probably have never seen. And so as a coach, when I work with people today, I one of the questions is I ask often is what is it that you know that you have been hearing from the inside trying to receive expression?
Mm.
Because I am convinced that when we cooperate with what we are feeling led to do, it is remarkable the level of fidelity and how often we will stay out of trouble, have opportunities, receive benefits, receive recognition that if you just jump out on your own, you will thwart or hold back those
Mm.
very things, or you will create the thing that you don't want.
Mm. Wow. Now
So
that's,
that's it.
yeah. Yeah, that's you know, 'cause I guess I love that going to that quiet place,
Hmm.
that meditative space. I was watching a program today and
Hmm.
they were talking about the state of Connecticut, that foster care system had been so broken that someone had sued in federal court, I think about 30 years ago. I mean, and it was uh, grossly impacting children of color. And
Yes.
they made a conscious effort to change it. And they have brought their number, as they say, lies may figure, but figures don't lie. They've literally brought their foster care numbers down, their placements down, their challenges down. And one of the things that one of the fathers was sharing was that when he learned about meditation, he said
Hmm.
he was raised without a father. He ends up with 4 kids, and the mother had gone off the deep end. And he said, I just did not know what to do. And the director, who's a black woman, she said one of the first things that they realized when she took over was that the system often attributed poverty to intent. And what she meant was that when a person came in and said, well, your children are not clothed clean, their clothes aren't clean, they don't have enough food, it was not a neglect, it was a poverty state. She didn't have the money to buy the
Hmm.
clothes. She didn't have, and so because of their financial condition, the system was making a judgment of intent. You are not a suitable parent
Hmm.
because you're not taking care of the
Hmm.
kids, rather than you're not this situation is caused by lack of money, by lack of resources.
Yes.
And meditation
Hmm.
was one of the key words. One of the young men, the young fathers now, who's gone through the program, been homeless, and now he has, I think, his 3 children living with him. And he was saying how that ability to go inside, to go to that quiet space and to listen to the spirit,
Hmm.
that gives you a profound connection to that well of infinite knowledge, which can give you direction. Hmm.
Yes. I share that belief.
Mhm. Have you always been spiritual like that, Doc, or how did you sort of arrive at that?
I think I've always been able to hear this inner wisdom speak to me,
Mhm.
but I have become deliberate and intentional about paying attention and not arguing. And when I argue, I always find that it is to my detriment, that there is a loss or something
Mm.
will happen that had I paid attention and cooperated with the voice inside, I would have avoided pain.
Mm, mm, wow. Now that's a very spiritual approach to life. I'd like to jump to another section of your life. You've done your early, your formative years, your library card and YMCA years,
Yes.
your military years,
Hmm.
and now you've become an executive coach. And I hear that term so often, and
Hmm.
you're one of the few people that when I hear the term
Hmm.
executive coach, I get a sense of what it is. But maybe you could share that a
Yes.
little bit, because it's like I didn't know executives needed coaching. What does that mean? So that's a term that you're one of the people that, if I look at all of your background, have all the tools in your box to coach executives and anybody else. So share a little about what it means to be an executive coach, how it works, and the type of things you do.
Well, I sometimes am asked, does that mean you're a life coach? And a part of me always says every executive I coach is someone who is working on their life.
Mhm.
But the focus is not that you're working on self. It's working on self, working on relationships with others, especially their team, because it's focused on an institution or organization. It can be focused on supporting direct reports as it relates to their career development, client, identify the expertise needed to support and nurture the dream of
Yeah.
those who are supervised.
Now,
It
Doc,
also
you
means
said
that,
something. You
yeah,
sort of went out there for a minute, Doc. You were talking about the reports. It helps you with these
direct
reports.
reports.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Leaders have direct reports, people they supervise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that they are skilled and able to be able to nurture the dream in those they supervise and to ensure that they invite them to use their best ideas to do the job that they're hired to do. And then, two last things, many times leaders work with boards, and it's important that the leader be able to partner with the board to achieve the goals for the organization. And last, leaders are held responsible for the performance in an organization. And so, in order to have the numbers met, the bottom line, so to speak, there are things that a leader needs to know and things that a leader needs to do. And many times that's hidden in the leader. So I'm
Mm,
always asking, what is it you would like me to know about this particular situation that would allow you to move closer to the goal that you have set?
mm,
And leaders often know exactly what they need to do, but because of fear or past experiences or challenges, they have not come up with strategies to be able to work through them. So, working with leaders, I am able to hear them describe, based on their leading, the best way to address an issue, a barrier, or a concern that is in the way of them being able to achieve the goal that they've set.
mm. Wow.
So that's how an executive coach differs from someone who works with an individual to, say, lose weight, or works
Okay.
with an individual to find a partner.
Yes.
Some of there are probably 20 or 30 areas of specialty associated with coaching.
Mm,
There are people who are family coaches, people who coach educators, um, just a variety. Weight loss,
mhm,
relationships, marriages. If you want
mm,
to uh, run an Ironman, they're able to support you in the nutrition as well as the training to get the body in
mhm.
shape to be able to accomplish a goal like that.
Wow. I can see how it's a very personal training, but it's a very necessary training in that, as you say, an executive coach And as you were explaining all the different layers of it, I can see now why you are a perfect and highly skilled executive coach. You know, I'm always fascinated by coaches who've never played the game. You know,
Yes,
you're like,
yes.
I don't know about that. But you, with all of your background, it seems that everything that you have done for your life to date has been to prepare you for the next level. What is the next level, Doc?
That's a lovely question, Dr. Harris. I am often reminded to dream big, to
Mm,
be open to major callings and changes and contributions. And right now, as the oldest daughter left of 8 children, there are 5 of us left of the 8.
mhm,
I am really focused on the next generation, nieces and nephews, and there are 20 of them. And so I'm finding that I am wanting to have legacy regarding how they have watched me live to begin to know that there are things that are possible that are a
mm,
big stretch beyond what most people have done. It's when I think of having grown up on a dirt street in Montgomery, I don't think there are many people from my neighborhood who've been around the world. I
mm,
don't think there are a lot of people who've completed a PhD or completed the or retired from the military as a fairly senior Army officer and to have been a senior civilian at the GS-15 level. I find now that talk is really cheap. There
mm,
are many people who can explain to you what you should be doing, regardless of whether or not they've done it. I went to see the play, The Death of a Salesman, with Wendell Pierce on the 28th of September on Broadway. And it was a very eye-opening, it was a consciousness raising presentation.
mm,
The storyline is a man who has great difficulty being truthful with himself about his life with his wife, his life with his children, his life at work. So he has an affair. He tells the wife that he's making money when he really isn't. He tells the people at work he's doing a job that he's not doing. He leads his sons to believe that they can do things because he supposedly is doing things, and the sons find out he's been lying. And he's offered a way out, and his ego will not allow him to take the way out.
mm. That's a
And
very famous play.
I
That's
shouldn't
a
tell the story.
well, no, that's a. I mean,
Yes,
that's a well-known play that
yes.
has played, I guess, in many evolutions on Broadway, and I
Well,
guess
it was,
a good story, a human story, a story that expresses a certain universality. You know,
mhm,
as you were thinking, I was thinking of a piece I wrote once, and it was living the life of somebody else,
mhm.
you know, other than me. And another a poem, living. What was it called? Living in the shadows of truth. Yeah.
Well, what it helped me understand, to go back to your question, is legacy for me is having lived with a measure of honesty with myself, honesty with other people, to have taken risk. Because I believe I've heard people say, if you don't have some failures in your life, you aren't stretching. You probably
Mhm.
haven't tried enough. You do things that on your own you couldn't do, and you really need the divine to step in to assist. You, I would probably have said no, but I know that there are things that on my own I could not have accomplished, but
Mm,
for support of the Creator. And I believe that's Creator from the perspective of the great mystery,
mm,
that the that this order in this humongous universe did not just happen. And most of the answers I've heard explained are not, don't come close to measuring what I believe represents the magnitude of this creator. And so I simply refer to the creator as the great mystery. And it is to that great mystery that I pay homage and worship. And when I can listen to that creator, it's amazing how I stay out of trouble. And I'm able to just protect and survive and achieve things that but for that guidance, I know would never have happened. And when I choose not to cooperate and listen to what I'm hearing inside, it's amazing how quickly I have losses and just disruption and confusion. And so as I age now, it's like, let me stay away from those things. Let me understand in the moment that if I will embrace what I know and lean into what I hear, that my life will be the kind of life that when the book closes, when the curtain falls, that there will be no shame in this game, and that perhaps others who come behind me will learn just a little bit from my walk.
That it seems clearly laid out, that next evolution, where you're going and how you're going to get there. I have one last question. I always ask about our book. You know, when I gave you your first copy of the book, you were so respectful, and I appreciated your feedback and your thoughts on it. And so I often ask, you know, as a person who's read the book, any thoughts of how it has helped you, how you see it as a tool, any other good stuff you can say about the book?
You know something, Dr. Harris, that is the kind of question that I'm almost reluctant to respond to. But I'll tell you something that has come out of your book that has been helpful for me. Many times I hear people give lengthy lists of things to do or change or fix or add. And the older I get, the more I realize that there are probably just 3 or 4 things to pay attention to. And if I pay attention to these from day to day, I start my day paying attention to them, that the universal laws fall under. These 4 principles subsume almost everything. They're an umbrella over them. And those things are to carry love in my life, love for myself, love for other people, to have it show up as care in my work and care for the environment as a steward, to stay on top of my health, and to pay attention to what's happening with this vehicle that gets me around from day to day. It's like your car. If you don't watch after your car with flat tires and no oil in the engine, in no time at all, you'll be sitting on the side of the road. The next is the work that I do, to really approach, to stop feeling like I have to do more and have more, and because I take nothing with me. So when I commit to doing something, to get in and do that little or much as best I can. And the last is be thankful with gratitude for the resources that I have, and to treat them with care, so that when it's time to hand them off, I'm not handing off stuff that's worse than when I got it. So in a nutshell, to love, to take care of my body, to be deliberate about the work that I do, and to be a good steward with gratitude. That's it. Beautiful. You may have 12 universal laws. Mine are boiled down to just those 4. And they make it pretty easy for me to remember and say thank you about them every day.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow, Doc. Well, you have shown and shared some profound things today. A great experience. I love it's like your journey as you were sharing. I felt like I was on your journey. And I guess as we close out, any final words you'd like to leave? Well, you know, your 4 points might be a most powerful final word, but any other final thoughts you may share before we wrap up? And wrap up with thankfulness that you've been here. Have you share your website because people will watch this. And
Thank you.
yes, what is your website, Doc?
My website is wooliturtle.com, and that's WULI turtle.com. Woolly is a Chinese phrase that means patterns of organic energy, not air, things that you can touch, the patterns associated with things that you can touch. And the turtle is in there because turtles are the oldest living creatures on earth. And when I started my practice years ago, 90% of all the businesses that started every year failed within a year. And I wanted to be reminded that I was in it for the long term, as young people say, in it to win it. And so I've been in practice for 22 years now, and it has been a blessing to serve. I thank you so much for having me on your show tonight. It is such an honor to know you, such a blessing to just bear witness to your faithfulness. I look at the books you've written, the places you've spoken, the people that you've helped, the political candidates you've supported, just all the ways that you have served, Dr. Harris. And I just believe that you are such a stellar contributor in so many ways. I am thankful to know you and honored to be on this program with you. May you continue to serve.
Thank you so much, Dr. Braye. And working with people like you creates such a harmonic vibration to make us all better and rise higher and do more. And so it is,
Yeah.
folks. I tell you, another edition of Success Talk, another journey down a line, down a path of light, a path of understanding, a path of wisdom, and a path of love. So thank you so much. Tune in for our next program, for the next Success Talk, where we share obstacles, breakthroughs, challenges, victories, and most of all, always knowing that the best is yet to come. And so it is.
And so it is.